It was just an accident, right, Mother? James's voice echoed through the emergency room as I lay on the gurney, each breath sending sharp pains through my chest. I watched through tear-filled eyes as my mother-in-law, Patricia, dabbed at her perfectly made-up face with a tissue. Of course it was. I was just trying to help her with those heavy boxes. I would never. She let out a theatrical sob that made my stomach turn. Help me? She deliberately pushed me down our basement stairs after I'd refused to give her the spare key to our house. But now, lying here in excruciating pain, I couldn't even speak to defend myself. My name is Sarah, and 2 hours ago, my mother-in-law tried to kill me. It started this morning when Patricia showed up unannounced at our house, demanding a spare key. Every mother should have access to her son's home, she'd insisted, following me as I carried boxes of holiday decorations to the basement. I'd refused, reminding her of the last time she had a key, when she'd rearranged our entire house while we were at work, claiming she was helping. That had led to a huge argument, and James had finally agreed to change the locks. "You're just trying to keep my son away from me," she hissed, her perfectly manicured hands clenching into fists. "You've always been jealous of our relationship." I'd turned my back on her, a mistake I now deeply regretted. The last thing I remembered was her hands against my back, then the sickening sensation of falling. The stairs seemed endless, each bump and crack against my body bringing new waves of pain. Now, in the emergency room, James stood between us, looking lost and confused. "Mother, maybe you should wait outside while they examine Sarah." Patricia's face crumpled into another theatrical display of concern. "But I need to make sure she's all right. I feel so terrible about this accident." Before anyone could respond, a tall doctor with steel-gray hair walked in, holding my preliminary x-rays. Dr. Maxwell, according to his name tag, took one look at the scene and his expression hardened. "I need to examine Mrs. Anderson privately," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Everyone out, please." "But I'm her husband," James protested. "Out," Dr. Maxwell repeated firmly. "Hospital policy for suspected domestic incidents." Patricia's perfectly composed face cracked for just a second. "Domestic? This was an accident. I would never." "Mother," James interrupted, taking her arm. "Let's give them space." He shot me a look that clearly said, "Don't say anything," before leading his mother out. As soon as the door closed, Dr. Maxwell turned to me. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm going to be direct. These injuries are not consistent with an accidental fall. The angle of impact and the pattern of bruising suggests you were pushed with considerable force." Tears welled up in my eyes. Finally, someone was seeing the truth. "There's more," he continued, putting up my x-rays. "These hairline fractures in your ribs, they're in various stages of healing. Some are fresh from today, but others are weeks, maybe months old. Would you like to explain?" I stared at the x-rays, my mind racing back to all the accidents over the past year. The time Patricia had accidentally opened a door into my face when I'd caught her going through our personal documents. The incident with the falling bookshelf that she claimed wasn't properly mounted. Each time, James had begged me not to make a fuss, to keep peace in the family. "Mrs. Anderson," Dr. Maxwell's voice was gentle but firm. "As a mandated reporter, I cannot ignore signs of domestic abuse. But I need you to be honest with me about what's happening." I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Years of conditioning to keep quiet, to maintain family peace, warred with the pain in my body, and the evidence literally illuminated before me. "If I tell you," I whispered, "will you make sure she can't get to me while I'm here?" Dr. Maxwell nodded, pulling up a chair. "You have my word. And Mrs. Anderson, you're not alone. We have resources, people who can help. But first, I need you to tell me exactly what happened today." As I began to speak, telling him about the stairs, the key, and all the previous accidents, I felt something inside me strengthen. For the first time since this nightmare began, someone was actually listening. "One more thing," Dr. Maxwell said, making notes in my chart. "We found traces of sedatives in your preliminary blood work. Have you been prescribed any medication recently?" My blood ran cold. The tea Patricia had insisted on making me this morning, claiming it would help with my anxiety. I'd only taken a few sips because it had tasted strange. "No," I said, my voice shaking. "But my mother-in-law made me tea this morning." Dr. Maxwell's expression darkened as he made another note. "I'm calling the police," he said, reaching for the phone. "This goes beyond domestic violence. We're looking at attempted murder." Outside the room, I heard Patricia's voice rising in pitch, demanding to know what was taking so long. For once, her theatrical concern didn't make me doubt myself. The x-rays didn't lie, and neither did the blood tests. Finally, someone was going to know the truth. The police arrived within 20 minutes, their presence sending Patricia into another round of hysterics. "This is ridiculous." I could hear her shrieking in the hallway. "I'm a respected member of the community. I serve on the hospital board." Through my partially open door, I watched James pace nervously as two detectives approached him. His face had gone pale, and he kept running his hands through his hair, a habit he had since childhood, according to the countless stories Patricia loved to tell. Detective Sarah Martinez introduced herself to me, her kind eyes contrasting with her no-nonsense demeanor. She recorded my statement while a photographer documented my injuries. Dr. Maxwell stood nearby, pointing out the concerning patterns in my x-rays to her partner. "And this wasn't the first incident?" Detective Martinez asked, though she clearly already knew the answer. I shook my head, wincing at the pain. "There were others. The bookshelf, the door." I tried to tell James, but he always said I was overreacting. "The blood work shows traces of lorazepam," Dr. Maxwell added, "a prescription sedative. Mrs. Anderson hasn't been prescribed any such medication." "But I bet someone in the family has," Detective Martinez said, making notes. "We'll need to check pharmacy records." That's when James burst into the room, his face contorted with anxiety. "Sarah, please, you can't do this. She's my mother. Think about what this will do to our family." Detective Martinez stepped between us. "Sir, you need to leave. Your wife is giving a statement." "My wife?" James laughed bitterly. "My wife is trying to destroy my mother's reputation over an accident." "Sarah, tell them it was an accident." I looked at my husband, really looked at him. The man I'd married 5 years ago, who'd promised to love and protect me, was now standing there begging me to protect the woman who tried to kill me. "It wasn't an accident," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "None of them were accidents, James. And deep down, you know that." His face crumpled. "She's getting older. She gets confused sometimes. We can get her help. Keep this private." "Private?" Dr. Maxwell interrupted, his voice sharp. "Your wife has multiple healing fractures. She was drugged today before being pushed downstairs. This isn't confusion, Mr. Anderson. This was attempted murder." A commotion outside drew everyone's attention. Patricia had somehow slipped away from the officer watching her and was trying to push her way into my room. "Sarah, darling," she called out, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Please tell them this is all a misunderstanding. You know how clumsy you can be." Detective Martinez's partner blocked the doorway. "Ma'am, step back or you'll be arrested." "Arrested?" Patricia's voice rose to a shriek. "Do you know who I am? My husband founded this hospital wing." "Mother, please," James begged. "Just wait outside." "No." Patricia's mask finally cracked completely. "I won't let her ruin this family. She's been trying to come between us since day one, James. Everything was perfect before she came along." The detective reached for his handcuffs. "Ma'am, you need to." She deserved it. Patricia suddenly screamed, her composed facade shattering entirely. "She's trying to keep my son from me. She's nothing but a gold-digging little." The rest of her rant was cut off as the detective officially placed her under arrest, reading her rights as she continued to scream accusations. James stood frozen, watching his mother being led away in handcuffs. His face had gone completely white. "I need to go with her," he whispered, not meeting my eyes. "She needs me." "Mr. Anderson," Detective Martinez said firmly, "your wife is the victim here. She needs you." But James was already backing toward the door. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I can't. She's my mother." I watched him leave, following the path they'd taken with Patricia. The pain in my chest had nothing to do with my broken ribs. "We'll need to get a restraining order," Detective Martinez said gently. "For both of them." I nodded, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. Dr. Maxwell patted my hand sympathetically. "You did the right thing," he said. "Who knows what might have happened if he'd stayed quiet." Looking at my x-rays still illuminated on the wall, I thought about all the times I'd stayed quiet, all the accidents I'd endured to keep peace in the family. Each ghostly fracture was a reminder of what that silence had cost me. "What happens now?" I asked Detective Martinez. "Now," she said, pulling out her card, "we get you help. I know a fantastic victims advocate who specializes in domestic violence cases. And Dr. Maxwell has already arranged for a psychological consult to help you process everything." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like hope. The road ahead would be hard, but at least I wasn't walking it alone anymore. Dr. Maxwell adjusted my pain medication as a nurse came in to check my vitals. Outside, I could still hear Patricia's distant screams echoing down the hospital corridor, but they were fading away, just like my fear of her. 6 months later, I stood in front of the courthouse, taking deep breaths of the crisp autumn air. Today was Patricia's sentencing hearing, and for the first time since that day in the emergency room, I would face both her and James. Ready? Detective Martinez asked, standing beside me. Over the months, she'd become more than just the investigating officer. She'd become a friend. The trial had been brutal. Patricia's legal team had tried everything to discredit me, painting me as an unstable woman who had orchestrated my own injuries to frame a beloved community figure. But the evidence was overwhelming. The security footage from our home showing her pushing me, the pharmacy records revealing she'd been filling lorazepam prescriptions at 3 different pharmacies, and most damning of all, her own journal detailing her plans to remove the problem from her son's life. James had testified for the defense, claiming his mother's actions were due to early dementia. The psychiatric evaluation proved otherwise. Patricia was perfectly cognizant of her actions. She was just a master manipulator who couldn't stand losing control over her son. I'm ready, I answered, straightening my shoulders despite the twinge of pain. A lasting reminder of that day. Inside the courtroom, I sat with my victim advocate, Lisa, who'd helped me rebuild my life over the past months. Thanks to her, I found a support group for survivors of family violence, started therapy, and even returned to my career as a software developer. Patricia sat at the defense table, looking frail and harmless in her conservative blue suit. But I knew better now. I watched as she whispered to James, who sat directly behind her, still playing the devoted son. The judge entered, and we all rose. After everyone was seated, Patricia was asked to stand. Mrs. Patricia Anderson, the judge began, her voice stern, this court has found you guilty of attempted murder in the 2nd degree, domestic violence, and multiple counts of assault. Your actions were not only premeditated, but showed a disturbing pattern of escalating violence against your daughter-in-law. Patricia's shoulders started to shake with sobs, but I noticed her eyes remained dry. Your position in the community and your attempts to use that influence to escape consequences only make these actions more reprehensible. This court sentences you to 15 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 10 years. The gavel struck, and Patricia's theatrical sobs turned to rage. This is all your fault, she screamed at me as officers approached to take her into custody. James, tell them what she's done to our family. But James just sat there, head in his hands, as his mother was led away. After the courtroom cleared, he approached me in the hallway. He looked older, tired, nothing like the confident man I'd married. Sarah, he said softly, I'm sorry. I should have seen it, should have protected you. Yes, I replied, you should have. Maybe we could try again. Now that she's gone, we could. No, James. I cut him off gently but firmly. You chose her over me every time I needed you. The divorce papers are final next week. It's better this way. He nodded, looking defeated. I never wanted any of this to happen. Neither did I. But it did happen, and now we both have to live with those choices. As I watched him walk away, I felt the last weight lift from my shoulders. My therapist had helped me understand that James had been as much a victim of his mother's manipulation as I had been. But that didn't excuse his choices. Outside the courthouse, Lisa waited with Detective Martinez. How about some coffee? Lisa suggested. We can talk about your speaking engagement at next month's Domestic Violence Awareness Conference. I smiled, remembering how terrified I'd been 6 months ago when she first suggested I share my story. Now I understood the power in breaking the silence. Actually, I said, I have something else planned. I pulled out my phone and showed them the email I'd received that morning. It was confirmation of my acceptance into a victim advocacy training program. I want to help others like you helped me, I explained. Maybe turn all this pain into something meaningful. Detective Martinez smiled proudly. From victim to survivor to advocate, that's quite a journey. As we walked to the coffee shop, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, so desperate to keep peace in the family that I'd accepted violence as normal. The x-rays in the emergency room hadn't just shown my broken bones. It illuminated the broken pieces of my life that I needed to fix. You know what Dr. Maxwell said to me last week at my final checkup? I told them as we sat down with our coffees. He said sometimes it takes being broken to discover how strong you really are. Lisa raised her cup in a toast to strength we never knew we had. I clinked my cup against hers, feeling grateful for this new family I'd found. one built on support and truth, rather than manipulation and fear. The scars would always be there, both physical and emotional, but they didn't define me anymore. They were just part of the story that led me to where I was meant to be.